Yeah, I can hear you.
He can't fucking hear us,
Yeah.
can he? Right, can you,
Yeah.
Jana, give us a sound check, give us a
you hear
countdown.
me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Can you give me 10 down to 1, please? Count backwards from 10 to 1.
Yeah. Hello?
Jana, can
Yeah,
you hear?
I hear you.
Can count down from
Yeah.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Do that all the way down to 1.
Yeah, you hear me?
Okay, no, he
Hello?
can't hear us. Mike, he can't hear us.
Well, he's saying to me that he can hear me.
He can.
But
Is he listening?
Hello?
Jana, can you hear us?
Yeah.
Do a countdown. 10, 9,
Hello?
8, 7.
Dendro? Yeah. You hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Hello?
Fuck me, we're on Radio Arnhem. Honestly, it's like the radio sets in Arnhem, this, isn't it? Shit.
Hello, mate. Come up with a private number and it went dead.
Ah, right. Have you got me?
Hello?
Jana, can you
Yeah,
hear
you
me?
rang before, but I went to answer and it went dead.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Yeah, can you hear me clear?
Clear as a bell, mate.
Clear as a bell. Brilliant. Okay, right. We're just going to do a sound check with Rusty. So cue Rusty.
Yeah.
Okay, just give me a call. A sound check. 10, 9, 8, 7. Go through that.
10987. You want me to do that?
Yeah. Go on
Yeah.
then.
Okay, I can hear you.
I think we're
Can't
there. Right.
9, 10, 11, 12, 13.
Well, it's you.
going up.
You need to be.
Yeah, yeah, but I mean, Rusty needs to be able to join in the conversation so we can bounce off each other. So obviously what we're going to,
No problem.
if you can just sort of picture it, Jana, Rusty and I are sat next to each other in the studio. So obviously we can see each other. Neither of us can see you. We're only going to be able to cue you in and out. So I shall just go over to you, Jana, and then you say your bit. And then we'll try and see if we can just sort of get the conversation bouncing around the subject of what they're going to do with all this defence spending that they're talking about, and this space satellite system, which sounds wonderful, but I think the practicalities of it are going to be somewhat different. So
No problem, Dave. I'm there, mate.
Good. So what I'm going to do, Jana, I'm going to come at it by sort of asking questions, and I want your reaction.
Okay.
The important thing is your reaction from the coal face of someone that's actually done this job out there. Yeah?
Yep.
So,
Boots on grounds, mate. You always need manpower.
well, I think it kind of, well, when we sort of, on the email I sent you, I sort of said halfway through the email about what the bottom line was, and that's exactly what the bottom line is. It's whoever's going to be out in the field. It could well be women as well, for all I know by this stage. It's not just going to be a question of blokes fighting, it'll be women as well. But it's what happens to our people, isn't it, really? And that's what we're bothered about. It's what's going to happen to our people.
Yep.
Or not going to happen to them, let's put it that way. So we're going to start off just by sort of going into the defence spending, and I should just open the question up. So what I'm going to do first, Janet, is I'll go to Rusty to speak, then I'll come to you. Yeah?
Yep.
Okay?
No problem, mate.
Right, okay. Are you ready,
I've got
Mike?
things I like to say.
Brilliant, okay. Rusty, welcome. Thank you very much for coming in to discuss the defence spending increases.
Well, thanks for the invite. There's a lot to talk about.
There is a lot to talk about, and the devil's in the detail. So we're also joined by another veteran, Jana. So Jana, thank you very much for joining us over the telephone. It's sad we can't accommodate you all in the studio, but thanks very much for joining us on the phone.
Pleasure, Dave. Pleasure, mate.
Thank you.
Hi,
Right.
Rusty. Nice to meet you.
So we're gonna start from where we left off with General Sir Richard Barrons, who sort of was saying that we needed to modernise, we needed to get smart with what was going on in space, we need to invest in some new equipment, and the chances are we're going to be looking at manned and unmanned equipment in that modernisation programme. So, Rusty, all that sounds great. We're getting another £10 billion a year for defence.
10 billion
Extra.
extra, yeah, well, that's great. But what's it going to be spent on exactly?
Well, this is it. This is the devil's in the detail. So, Jana, how do you feel about that? Another 10 billion extra a year for defence?
Well, the saying goes, you always need men on the ground. It's all right having all this technology, but when it goes wrong, you still need boots on the ground. You still need that side of it. And it's all well and good, all this money they're saying, but as per usual, they're saying it. They talk the talk, well, they walk the walk.
Well, they walk the walk.
They need the manpower. People are still being recruited. I've got family joining up. They still need men and women to join up. So this business about technology cannot take over completely.
I think there's a valid point there, Jana, that it can't solely be that. So what we're going to look at now is just potentially where they're going with this. So I'm in full agreement with Barron's on yes, this needs to happen, but the devil's in the detail. So what are we going to be spending this money on, and who with?
Exactly.
Now, the current principal system that's sort of looking like that's going to be managing the space constellation. The existing system, Skynet 5, is run and operated by Airbus Defence, which is predominantly EU. So, Rusty, just initially, sort of just on that one basis, we're talking about the existing system, and they're talking about upgrading and putting a contract out to tender to run Skynet 6, which will be the new system for space, the space constellation of satellites. So Airbus Defence are currently running that. How do you feel about that?
Well, at the moment, I mean, Airbus are predominantly German, right? And they're running it. They're going to put it out, you say, to tender. I don't know who they're going to put it out to tender to exactly, but I've got a feeling if the Germans are running it now, would they be happy, do you think, to hand it over or carry on doing what they're doing? And the technology they've got on 5, then surely that I don't think they need to be that bright to work out. They're probably not going to hand it over to anybody. They'll probably want to carry on running it themselves.
A progression.
Is that a fair tender?
I mean, these are valid questions. Jana, how do you feel about that? Airbus Defence running a critical defence system, or they're currently running it now, and let's say there's the potential, and we're asking this as a question, the potential that they would be running this new, and let's say it's going to be a critical system for the integrated operating concept that the generals are now talking about, the chiefs of staff are now talking about. So how do you feel about that, Airbus Defence in that arena?
Well, there's a lot of talk going on at the moment about buy British. There's a lot of people now saying a lot of firms are reopening because people are buying here and not buying from China because there's too much stuff coming in that's dangerous from there. We know about that. You know, there's always smuggling going on. Personally, I'd rather it was all British designed. At the end of the day, I think we're the top scientists involved anyway. But why should we come under somebody else's, especially why should we come under Europe? Because, you know, Brexit means Brexit. We'll still help, but we're still NATO. NATO has got to stay. But this business is about a European army. Sorry. No, it's got to be Britain should be doing what they've always done.
Yeah. Well,
we help other countries. We do our bit. Boots on the ground again.
Well, I mean, that's okay cooperating, but in terms of actual, and this is one of the headlines that I've got here, so it's probably a good time to bring this in. So one of the things that I'm concerned with, and I want to know your feelings on it, is sovereign military capability. That this comes under not just the military, but the industry as well. And we're now looking at a new industrial revolution, digitally and computing. That surely, and I'm asking you two guys as someone that's been at the, the hard end, the sharp end of British military, that there's that aspect, but that sovereign industrial capability needs to really be British as well. Otherwise, we don't. It doesn't really. How does that work through if another country, potentially, or another authority beyond that of our own country has got control over it?
Well, it'd be a first, won't it? We should run our own. That's what we've done. That's why we're number one in the world, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I don't see any reason to fix something that's not broken, really. We're Britain. We've got the capability, and of course, we'd like to see it British.
Well, this is something that General Barron said about, we could score a lot of points with this, and
Yeah.
I agree with him.
Yeah,
We can fix our military.
Yeah.
We can get jobs. We can put that money, invest into our own
Yeah.
infrastructure and our own sort of industry in this country. So the military and the industry could go together. And if that's going to go abroad, I think we're going backwards with this.
well, it's another, who's thought all of this out? What they're not considering, or it sounds like it's not being considered, are the boots on the ground guys. It's okay having this wonderful setup, but what happens if something happens to that setup and we don't have a backup plan?
Yeah.
Because at the moment, we can say it's sky in that, it's up in the sky. Well, it is.
Yeah.
But what's going to happen actually on the ground?
Yeah.
And what happens if, as we know, computer systems crash?
Yeah.
Where do we go then, especially if we go down the road of getting rid of our hardware, the tanks, this, that, and the other? What are we left with if plan A fails? Do we have a plan B? It doesn't sound like it.
Well,
And-
I think this is a critical thing, isn't it? Government doesn't always get decisions right. They don't always make good decisions, and it's up to everyone to sort of get involved and go, whoa, stop, hang on a minute, you've missed that. And this is a vital thing. Jana, how do you feel about this sort of aspect of potentially having new power, but where's the control?
I totally agree with what Rusty just said. You've got to have plan B and C in my eyes. In the military, in my time, Rusty's time, things don't always go to plan. Now, technology is all well and good, but who else is involved? We've seen these films, I know, Bond films and that. It's already happening. We know that 10, 20 years ago they said these things would happen. But I'm sorry, you've got to have that place where we're safe. You've got to keep hardware. You can't go giving our tanks to other countries and selling them off, because next thing you know, those people, which has happened in the past, are attacking us with our own weapons.
Well, that has
in the
happened.
Falklands.
In the Falklands, absolutely,
Exactly.
that happened there. Yeah, quite. And well, there was other factors involved as well. So let's go a bit further with the detail on this. And I'm sure, just in terms of raising the awareness, not just with veterans, but with the general public, and particularly with our MPs, that the company that's going to be making this new satellite constellation for the integrated operating concept and this Skynet system is a company called OneWeb. Now, the British government has just bought a £500 million stake in this company, OneWeb, and it is owned by Sunil Mittal, an Indian tycoon who's got a conglomerate, a massive portfolio of businesses. So both Mittal and the British government have put £500 million each into this company called OneWeb. Now, OneWeb was bankrupt, and it's now obviously got a lot of investment, and it's now going to come out of bankruptcy. So OneWeb is going to make this constellation of satellites. So just in terms of that recipe there, how do you feel about that, Rusty?
Well, you could call it a recipe maybe for a disaster. Who knows? If they've gone bankrupt once, we've actually bailed them out, is what's being said, okay?
Yeah. Well, the British taxpayer has.
Yeah, just give 500 million away. There's 5 footballers, just give them away. Where's the accountability, and how definite is that 500 million going to be? It doesn't sound an awful lot of money to me to bail somebody out.
Do you think there's going to be more money put in?
Of course. You can't, unless we go backwards. And that's what we're already talking about. Who's thought all this stuff out?
Yeah. Who thought this through?
We've gone to a bankrupt, somebody that's actually bankrupt, and given 500 million pounds. Okay,
Well,
that'll get you on your feet.
So,
How much more?
well, they haven't produced the goods yet. The goods have not
No.
been produced. This system isn't up in space yet,
No.
and space is the new domain. Space, let's say, is the final frontier.
Yeah. But we've given 500 million.
500 million, well, let's say that's potentially an opener, because the chances are there's going to be more money involved. Jana, how do you feel about that recipe there of British government going half and half with Mittal on what was a bankrupt company?
Disgusted with it because apparently India's got more millionaires than any other country in the world. Yet we shouldn't be giving any of the foreign aid's got to stop because we know what happens. The politicians in those countries take it; they don't give it to the people.
Yeah, it's not.
For the last 40 years that's been going on.
Jana, we're not dealing with. We're not dealing with foreign aid, mate. We're dealing with an actual business, a business that's going to be in bed with the British government, making a critical defence system.
Yeah, but why are we going with these people that have been bankrupt? They're going to do it again. They just make more money, like the politicians will. They'll go bankrupt and they just take more money, which should be going to the people. And to back to the same subject, boots on the ground, isn't it?
These are the questions. So let's go one step further. Sunil Mittal, very very recently, who's the owner? Let's say, I mean, it's his business in effect. Recently was on a stage endorsing Huawei. So we've got a lot of British politicians, particularly in Duncan Smith, Rusty, who's leading a campaign in Parliament to keep Huawei out of our critical infrastructure. And yet, from what's been reported here that I've looked at, that Mr. Mittal has endorsed Huawei, and we have the British government going into business with him to make a critical defence system.
It doesn't sound like a good recipe. Ian Duncan Smith going against it, that for me is good enough. And of course, I'm not for it either. Huawei, why do we need them? We've got all these different companies and different, countries getting involved. Is it not our system? Is it not what we want and where we're going to put our money? So why don't we look at it a different way? Why do we need Huawei? We don't.
Well, Jana, just give us your take on that right at that sort of stage before I go one click on with this. So how do you feel about that?
Well, as you said before, Duncan Smith, I was reading up about it back along, and I've seen some of the stuff that's been written in papers now. Duncan Smith. Now, that one politician saying that, what about these other politicians? You can't be alone. We voted them there. They should be doing the job for us, the people.
Yeah.
Sounds like they're doing their own thing here, not informing the people. They're lying to the people again.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't.
It's like idiots.
To me, it doesn't seem like a good recipe. We've had a lot of Huawei in the press, a government report. And we've got. I think potentially we've got an area for certainly a lot of discussion here. And evaluation and the scrutiny, and I would like to see that happening with the politicians. So let's just go one click on from this, and we've sort of broached it just a second ago in terms of, okay, we get this new system, God knows what it'll be once it's up there and working, okay, and it goes down. What's plan B? Now, General Barons was saying that the big risk we've got at the moment is precision hypersonic weapons and precision ballistic missiles and a new something relatively new, which is called an EMP device, electromagnetic pulse. And the thing about EMPs is it wipes any computer out that is anywhere in its radius. No computers work. All right, so it's potentially a major. It's going to be a major component in any future conflict if push comes to shove. Right. So potentially any computer system, once these things are let off, are not going to work. So Rusty, over to you. What's Plan B if we get that?
Well, without any of our troops, if you like. Now, depends on the European side. The EDU and where we are. In the near future, where are we going? Everything's been kept quiet still.
Yep.
And how many times we've said that. So if they're not letting us know what goes on, the plan B is we have no hardware, we have no tanks, we have no weapons. We don't have anything. All we have is some troops. The computers are down for everything.
Then what?
Then what is red against blue, if it comes to that.
Yep.
And we don't have any backup plan at all. Nothing to fight with.
Well, look, from your point of view, all right. You go into a conflict situation. Some of the equipment fails.
Yeah.
All right. what other equipment have you got to draw from in order to carry on with? This is where we are with this, because if we look down the other end of the barrel, the opposition is going to know where this principal equipment is run from, and it's going to get struck.
That's it.
If you go into, it's going to get struck. It's not going to go, oh, well, you can carry on using that.
That's
They're going to take it out.
Yeah, and as I say, the plan B is, at the moment, I don't see a plan B. That was the question. What is plan B?
Where's plan B?
There isn't a plan B.
Yeah. If
But
there's
we haven't got anybody or any... The guys that will be there, if the tanks are stored or got rid of, they're not even going to be trained on them if they need to use them.
This is my next thing, training. I've got that, absolutely. Yeah.
So, great, we've got a shed full of tanks, but we haven't got anybody who can drive them.
No, because
or gunners.
Yeah.
Same with all the rest of everything, really. We won't have anybody trained and up to speed on it, even if we do have it. From what I can gather, and training, of course, is
Critical.
very, very important, especially for troops and military on the ground.
Correct. Janet, your take on Plan B. The enemy takes out our critical stuff with either precision nukes or a precision EMP or some kind of hypersonic with high explosive, and they go for the important stuff, because we're in that situation. Let's say worst case scenario. Okay, what do you feel about what's going to be Plan B if there's no actual hardware left and they?
Well, in my past, I've always thought that the generals advise the government. It sounds like to me the generals and the admirals are saying things, and they're just not listening. Now, the military people that have been in 30 odd years were in the time I was in, and in the time Rusty was in. These are the men that are supposed to, speak the mind of us, the veteran. You've got to have other things in place. I mean, like you said about the guns and that, for long, like you said, everybody be sat by a computer, and we'll have no tanks on street corners and nothing, no gunnery, no armoured cars, no nothing. You've got to have that. It's just that's general. It's on our side. The government should be listening, not just and then just stab us in the back and not listen.
Well, I think that's an important point. I mean, we've got to come at this from one angle here now. Really, the principal permanent secretary at the MOD, Stephen Lovegrove, is a former Deutsche banker, and his main heading in his role, his job description is the government's principal advisor in defence, and he's a banker. Okay, so let's look at that. Who's actually, and he is the most senior person in the MOD. So in terms of where that advice is coming from, the generals and the admirals and the air chief marshals, and I'm going to bring the ex-ones in as well at this point, because some of them reached out to me from a previous program, and one particular admiral who was in charge of Trident, so this is a very senior job within the Navy, had said that there was a policy void in government from the period of Oliver Letwin, when they would neither deliver a capable national force or a reservist basis force. They were not going to deliver either, and there was a void. Now, from my point of view, I'm quite happy to rely on what this guy said because of his rank and his standing. I'm quite happy with what he said, that's the case. So where are we now with defence policy? Because this policy looks like it's half-baked.
Well, as I've said earlier, it hasn't, I don't think, been fully thought through. Good idea, let's put it out. That's what they're good at. But actually, they're not really taking, I think they're missing the point is that we are supposedly the British Army, okay? And then we have to, we train well and we fight well. That's proven, known. But because it's been half thought out as there's no plan B, the same thing happens is that what if and what's going to happen and who's going to pay what. But we don't see where it's going. There was 16.5 billion that has just been pledged. Where's it going to go?
Yeah.
It's all right saying, we're going to do that, but nobody's actually saying.
Well, they've already kind of intimated with a new phrase that they're using in terms of some of the old, the Cold War era equipment has got to go in order to make room for this new equipment. So, I mean, they're not using the old sort of what was acceptable in terms of defence cuts. That was never what they were, but that's how it was pitched politically. They're now saying that old kit has got to go in order to make room for this.
The old kit has been proven, okay, at the moment. And I don't know when the plan is for the old kit to go, let's say, but actually, does it still not leave a gap that needs to be filled? And when I was serving, we always had a what if.
Yeah.
Always a what if plan. What if that doesn't work? What if what you're saying is we'll get rid of the stuff, we'll put the new stuff in. Most of it's up in the sky anyway, so it's not in the way. So what's the point? We need to secure ourselves, and that's what we've always done.
Yeah.
And at the moment, if I'm not wrong, it's in the hands, or can be in the hands of Germany. You know, and hey, we've had 2 world wars, you know. Are they going to run us?
Well, Barney is still looking for a deal.
Well, that's...
He's still in London looking for a deal. 50% of
Yeah.
the withdrawal agreement and the
Yeah.
future relationship with the EU is defence and security.
Yeah.
This is the bit that's the missing dimension in all of this. People, general public think it's a trade deal.
Of course they
No,
do.
half of it is defence and security, and that concerns Her Majesty's Armed Forces and what's left of British industry.
Yeah.
Janet, how do you feel about that? The Barnier is still, you know, he's still looking for a deal that includes defence and security.
Well, as I just said before, secure our borders. We're good at doing other people's borders. About time we started looking after ourselves. We're an island. And
Yeah,
a lot
well-
of people I know, from farmers to fishermen, agree with that entirely.
Yeah.
And it comes back to the old saying you've all heard before, in order to have peace, you must train. Train for war, not press buttons and have 20 guys doing the work of 1,000.
Yeah.
It's
looking
really
it's looking-
getting my goat, this is.
Yeah, it's looking like some people in Whitehall think this is about pressing buttons. That's a phrase I've heard before. Thank you for that, Jana.
Yeah.
I've heard that.
They live in that world of technology. They press a button and sack people. You know what I mean?
Well,
sack themselves.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good one, isn't it? So let's look at this. Let's actually look at this Skynet system, which is, you know, it's a jam tomorrow type gambit, isn't it? You know, we're going to have jam tomorrow. So my question is, obviously, so we've got Mittal in there, who's got a massive civilian interest, and in the reports that I've seen, looking at this system, that some of it is civilian, and obviously we've got the British government now coming in with what's going to be a defence system. So, just as a question, Rusty, you know, are we looking at the company OneWeb, who are going to deliver Skynet, that's going to be operated by Airbus potentially, piggybacking civilian and defence on the same satellite constellation?
Wow, that's a fairly good question. I don't really know the answer, but does it sound like it?
Well,
How else can it be done?
and if Mr. Mittal is okay with Huawei and opening up the doors, and I've seen another report where they said that they were looking at another partner with Hughes Satellite in America. You know, where are the boundaries? This thing isn't contained. It's not got a ring around it that just says British government only, and it's just to do with our troops and that's not that. I'm not seeing that.
It seems that we're not in it at all. Everybody else is in it, but it doesn't seem like. Where are we?
Well, surely, you know, it's a critical. Let's look down. Let's look down. You know, something that has worked for quite some time. Trident. Okay.
Yeah.
It's operated by the Royal Navy.
Yeah.
From Northwood, from Faslane.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's got a ring around it, and it's just ours, and no one else gets involved. It's a critical defence system. Okay. Nobody else is in there, as far as I'm aware. It's just us. You know, so as a model, is that really what this is really? You know, I'm just going to submit this as a question. Is this where we should be going with this new system? Something like the way that we run Trident?
I would think if you asked most of the veterans in particular and the people of this country, they would like to think that we're looking after ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay, which we've always done.
Yeah.
How are we going to, you know, I'm all for moving forward, don't get me wrong. But, you know, as you say, something like that would give us, would it not, jobs? It would give us
Well, this is
industry.
coming back. This is coming back to Barron's gambit.
Of course
so
it is.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
So Jana, just in terms of, you know, Trident is pitched You know, the British taxpayer, pays a great deal of money in taxes for this system as independent. So if we just say that Skynet would go on the same basis as independent, would you support it?
If it's giving British jobs, which people in Britain need, we want here, because at one time we were the best in the world at all this, and we could be there again. It's our experts and that do a lot of the designing. A lot of it comes down to money, as we know. And yes, if it's run like the Navy, the Trident, I can remember the Trident coming in. I can remember all the trouble saying, "Oh, but if we didn't have the technology, other countries would." And that's the thing, isn't it? What the Russians and Chinese thinking about, it's.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's look at Russia's portfolio for a second, shall we? That their critical defence systems are run by who?
Russians.
And have they got rid of all their Cold War equipment?
Not that I'm aware of, and it's not been reported.
Well, I still see Russian tanks. I still see Russian Bears.
Yeah.
I still see the White Swan, their big strategic bomber.
The
They've still got their
everything.
Artillery. They've still got all the other stuff. They've not got rid of that.
No, they haven't.
They've got a lot of new kit. Okay, they've invested. They've brought themselves up. They've got a lot of new impressive equipment, which has triggered all this. They've not got rid of the old stuff.
No, they haven't, because they might need it. And that's the same as us. We may need it. And if we haven't got it,
then what?
Hands up.
So let's look at the new region. Okay, we're going to come down to our bottom line now, which is our people. All right, that might find themselves in Eastern Europe, in the Ukraine, or in Africa under this new system. Okay, and they're going to be in a conflict situation with manned, unmanned, and this space Skynet system. Okay. Skynet goes down because it's been shot out of the sky and interrupted, or the headquarters has been blown up.
Yeah.
Okay. What about our troops?
We don't have any. And the troops that are around, they've got no chance of anything, because they're going to have nothing to work with, or very limited resources.
You're going to find themselves outgunned.
Yeah, of course they are. The Russians have got all their stuff. If we're talking about Russia, bringing Russia into it, bring China into it, they've got their stuff. I don't see them.
A massive volume.
Yeah, of course they have. And I don't see any of them getting rid of it. No. Why? Because there's a reason. And the reason is they've got a what-if plan.
What if?
Right? Yeah. And we haven't. And we need to get one. And they need to get together, and they need to get some brains together, ex-military, top guys that have been there and done it, and explain to them 16.5 billion. Yeah, there you go. We get rid of all the stuff we've got. You must be joking.
Yeah.
We need it.
Yeah.
If they need theirs, we need ours. You know what? They get rid of their stuff, we'll get rid of ours.
Well, we could think
How
about
that?
it. At that point, we could think about it.
How's that?
It's not level, is it?
No, it's not level. The playing field, unfortunately, at one end is swamped.
Yeah.
And that's where we're going to be. The playing field on the other end, they'll be out there saluting each other all day long.
Yeah.
It's not clear cut.
No, it's not.
But we don't. I really honestly believe we need to keep so that we, if ever it's needed, we have it. At the moment, it sounds like, just get rid of it.
Well, I mean, Jenna, you broached this sort of earlier on with the Falklands. A lot of the equipment we're talking about at the moment that's in the crosshairs of this, let's say, process, for want of a better word, is tried and trusted. It's worked, and more importantly, it's paid for. We've bought it. We own it. It's out there. It works. Okay. So, in terms of just let's say jumping the gun and getting rid of it. Forgive the pun. Where are you with that? Your message to Ben Wallace and all the mandarins there and all the staff in the MOD.
Well, why aren't they listening to these veterans and these high-ranking generals and colonels?
Good question.
You've got to have backup plans as servicemen and as commando forces and all this. So we always have to. Things don't go right. You've got to be ready, and if something goes right, you've got to deal with it. Yeah. And as you said before, technology, if the Russians have got their tanks lined up, we know a lot of those tanks don't even start. I'm going back to the 70s and 80s now before I joined Commando Forces. And all the Russian tanks, we know for a fact, the ones that you see looking, half of them don't even start, etc., etc. But they've got stuff behind that. Same as us. They've got tanks, We know our tanks are better than theirs. You know, it's an artillery thing. It all comes down. You've got to have.
They've got a lot
hardware.
more of them, though.
You've got to have it.
Yeah, quite right.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Quite right. They've got a lot more of them.
And all the British troops that come back from Germany, I've got a German family out there, they never wanted the British to leave because the money, a lot of those towns in Germany are suffering because we trained the German army to go to Afghanistan. It was the British troops that trained German soldiers to go there.
Yeah.
They didn't lose as many as us because they didn't have as many of us there doing all the hard work. It was Canadians, the British, the Americans doing the bulk of the work.
Yeah.
As per usual.
Yeah. I'm just.
NATO is nothing without us.
Well, Well, thank you, Jenny. We're just going to wash this up now. We're going to conclude this because I've actually listened to this. So it's an amazing quote from a general, and it's coming back to our current sort of theme, which is European Defence Union. And this general, I can't name him. He's got to remain anonymous for the purposes of what we're doing here. But he has stated that NATO will be consumed, I quote, by European Defence Union. Rusty.
When they say consumed, you mean taken over? Is that?
Well,
why don't they say that?
Yeah.
If that's going to happen, but the way you've just read that out to me, it sounds like being consumed. We've got the EDU. It takes NATO over as well, or did they get rid of NATO? And keep just the EDU because we can't have the master of both.
Yeah, you can't have two masters.
You can't.
Know? So I think this is a critical thing, isn't it? Because what we're finding when general public and veterans write into their MP and they want to discuss European Defence Union, firstly they get a government template letter from within the Cabinet Office. They don't get a reply from the MP because they're not seeing, they're not thinking, they're not doing this themselves. They just reach, please answer that. Okay, so they're not even looking at it. So we've got an awareness problem, an education problem here. So that's point one. But in those template letters, and we filtered them from all over the country, from whatever MP, regardless of the party, they used to say NATO was the cornerstone of our defence. And I'd like to say, well, just hang on a minute, whoa. Because it's Her Majesty's Armed Forces within NATO that are our defence. NATO in itself, that's not quite right. That's not the full picture because it's sort of diverting the public attention. What defends us is Her Majesty's Armed Forces.
That's it. And it always has done. So, and it's worked, right? It's worked forever. And the fact is that, as I said earlier, why are we thinking about, apart from moving into the future and moving ahead, you know, options for change, you might want to say, okay, well, that's fair enough. But actually, for us, NATO have been there and it's worked. The British Army have been there and it's worked. So what are we trying to fix?
Yes.
I don't get it.
Yeah.
What are we trying to fix?
Yeah.
Because it ain't broken.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be broken. The British soldier, military, you name it, the Navy, all of them, the Air Force, they are the best.
Yeah.
And what we're going to do, hand it over to somebody to run and we'll be part of it.
Well, to an extent, when we were looking at those defence expenditure graphs earlier on in the office this morning, where we've seen from Churchill, you know, big investment under Churchill's second term after the government, after World War II rather, and then a decline, you know, and then it was steady in the 50s and 60s, and then we hit the Knott Review in 81, and it's literally being dismantled from 1981 onwards. And as Anne Widdecombe pointed out to us, that was 7 or 8 years before the Soviet Union changed. We'd already started to disarm. And the Soviet was still there.
Yeah. I saw the graph.
So this is, you know, in terms of Her Majesty's Armed Forces, you know, okay, you know, they have been, you know, depleted.
Yeah.
The resilience has been taken out, you know, which is what we're seeing with the NHS. The main problem with the NHS is the resilience is gone. Right, so we're seeing the resilience come out of the military. They're now talking about taking out what would be a plan B if we have, you know, a conflict with getting rid of the old equipment. But the bottom line is it's Her Majesty's Armed Forces in NATO as a collective, or are we going to end up being Her Majesty's Armed Forces as literally a component within a European Defence Union? And bearing in mind, who then says No. Because that's run by the European Commission.
Yeah.
How do we say no to the European Union or Ursula von der Leyen?
You can't, because they're running it. So how
Well, there's
can you say no?
There's no veto. Maggie Thatcher had a veto in defence under her arrangement.
Yeah.
In this new arrangement, will there be a veto? Von der Leyen has already said no. No veto.
Well, you can understand that if they're running it. They'll want full control.
Well, we come back to power with control.
Well, what I'm saying is they'll want full control. And because they're running it, they will get it, I would think. Are we going to put a fight up? I don't see any leaders there.
Good
I don't
question.
see that we've got any leaders.
Yeah.
Who's going to put the fight up?
Yeah.
You know, the likes of us have been there and done it, and we have to sit here and watch it or have a say. But can we change it? We can't as we are here. But
It's going to need something new to change it. Jana, where are you with Ursula von der Leyen telling our troops to jump to?
Well, she can go and do one, can't she? She's a clown. What I'm trying to say is NATO has got to stay. People like her, I mean, they don't look in the real world. They just live in their little crystal palaces. NATO has to stay. Japanese are in NATO. All countries, decent countries of the world are in NATO, correct?
Yeah.
They're all willing to help. We've always had the Commonwealth helping us.
And it works.
It's got to stay.
It's very interesting. Russ and
It
I
works, exactly.
when we were doing our kind of, getting our prep together, our 7 Ps, is it? 7 Ps. 7 Ps. Well, somebody in Whitehall needs to do some of them Ps with this Skynet job, I think. But what we were looking at was the preparation for the whole thing here. So I just see that that somebody's missed about 3 or 4 Ps here, haven't they, Rusty?
Probably at least 4 of the Ps. The last bit, piss poor performance, they've got that one right.
Well, that's there, yeah.
Yeah, the earlier ones in the 7 Ps, I'm afraid, I don't know where it's gone or where. I just don't see it. But they've got the last 3 right up to now.
Yeah.
So give them the due. They're not all that thick. But actually, it just is. I just don't know.
Yeah. Well,
The type of people I speak to as well, that I do speak about this to some of the guys that I've worked with and served with, every one of them are under the same opinion.
Yeah.
They're not all here, but they're under the same. I haven't met anybody who disagrees with
the
it.
same as me. Once they know about it, well, this is the interesting thing, isn't it? A lot of other countries in the world complain about NATO. There's a lot of a lot of pushback against it. Okay, what I'm not seeing, none of those same countries say anything about European Defence Union. Nothing.
They don't say anything.
So
Nothing.
why is that? Why are they not complaining about European Defence Union? It's there, it's real. They're complaining about NATO, but not a thing about European Defence Union. Tells us a story.
Well, they want the European Defence Union. Simple.
Is that because they can beat it?
What, sorry?
Is that because they can beat it?
No. Well, it's hard to say. But what I do think is that, and I really believe in this, that the EDU want to be the EDU. They probably want us in it.
Yep.
Yeah, for definite.
Yep.
Because we are the best. And I don't care what anybody else says. That'll never change in my mind. Of course, they want us in it, but they don't want us to run it. They want us to be under control of them, the Germans. And let's be honest, who wants to be under control of Germany?
But there's a serious problem here, because the European Defence Union will be run by von der Leyen and the Commission.
Yeah.
We are no longer there in the Council because we've left, and yet we're potentially going to find ourselves in a situation in Defence Union, or a component within Defence Union, or cooperating in Defence Union, without having oars in the water at all at that top level.
I agree. And of course, what you're going to do with NATO, who have been there all those years and that we rely on, and in my opinion we need, and all of a sudden the EDU pops its head up and got British troops in there training with them and hiding the patches and stuff
in
like
Bosnia,
that.
that's right,
What's going on with
that?
that?
Well, they're not being honest with the general public.
They're not.
Yeah. Jana, final word to you, and we're going to close.
Right, mate. That's what she just said. Exactly. We train everybody in the world, and they just throw it back in your face, right? Who rebuilt Germany after the war? We did. We fed the people. We got them back building it. We got their factories going again. And people have got short memories, mate, right? But I haven't. I tell you what, mate, I'm a layman like you. They're not telling the truth. And I tell you what, I'm quite a laid-back bloke, but I tell you what, I am really getting miffed for this now. It's like the lunatics that took over the asylum.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Our MPs have got
too many clowns in there.
Our MPs have got to get their finger out, haven't they, Jana?
Well, can I just say one more thing, Dave? Boris needs to get somebody in the military running the MOD. Not that, you know who, right? It's all little games, and they think they're clever. They're not clever. They're sitting in ivory towers and they're lying. And the people that sit home, we've had enough, mate. My fisherman friends, my farmer friends, they ain't stupid, right?
Yeah.
People working men work around, keep this country going. And it's really, really, MPs, I wish they'd come down to Dartmoor and have a word with locals here, mate, because we'd give them a piece of our mind, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, you would do. I
Next
don't
time we
doubt
give them
that.
the keys to Buckingham Palace over.
Well, yeah, there's a sore point.
And
Rusty,
also,
fast word.
maybe we should look at the top, the Prime Minister. How about all these advisors that actually don't know what they're advising about? And he listens to it, and somewhere down the line there's a decision made. But why not make a good decision? And, okay, 16.5 billion there. But this public don't know where that money is going, and we've just discussed some of it. Okay, they've lifted it up to 16.5 billion.
Yeah, but what?
Brilliant.
Yeah.
But it's going to be, 40 billion and plus over 4 years?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So we're talking about up there when we haven't even secured our borders down here now.
Yeah.
Air defence. Have we got air defence?
Well, according to General Sir Richard Barrons, there is no current air defence for the UK.
Well, there you go. Thank you.
And I'm happy. If he says that, I'm okay with that because he's just retired. He's just come out, so he would know.
Right. Well,
So if Boris wants some defence advisors, there's plenty of senior staff that have just come out that know about this, that have reached out to me. What are we doing with these SPADs, they call them, don't they? And we've just seen one of them go. He said no industrial experience, no military experience, and yet he's touring around Hereford, touring around MI5 and the security services and other military bases.
Paul and the SBS.
Well, I don't know. He might be a good guy. I don't know. But, hang on a minute. If you want some advice, get somebody that's done the job.
Yeah. And there's plenty of them up there now because they got rid of them.
That's all. Yeah, they've all been retired.
So they've got a lot to say.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, and maybe, don't hide them. Bring them out.
Bring them out.
Good work.
Yeah, well, I'm quite right.
And give them a job. And they'll do a good job. And that's what Britain needs. You know what? Get those borders sorted. Get those, I better not say it, but get them out the country, the ones who shouldn't be here.
Well, it's a problem there needs dealing with, and they're not dealing with it.
No, they're not.
I know what you're saying. Yeah.
They're not. It's just bouncing. Hopefully it'll go away. It won't go away.
It won't go away.
It'll get worse.
Yeah.
And our British people, the ones that we should be protecting, feel unsafe, right? We've been through this one on your program not long ago because of what's in their area and stuff.
Yep.
How should that be?
Wrong.
Absolutely, totally wrong.
Yeah.
That should never happen.
Should never happen.
Our people, we've got an island, okay? How hard is it to protect an island?
You would
It's
think.
worked all those years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Mickey Mouse guys are coming across the border, wandering up, getting fed and housed and everything else
Trip
on a
to
slightly
Anfield.
different,
Yeah.
on a slightly different subject. And we sit back and go, "I'll take some more money. Yeah, take a free rail pass." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just beyond belief where
is.
we are.
Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed. Good night.
Pleasure, Dave.
Cheers, Jana. Well done,
Jana.
mate. That was good.
Yeah, I'll see you on the way. I'll see you on the way out, mate. I'll come back through Princetown.
Okay, boy, because I've got to go tabby in a bit. I'll wait till you get here, mate.
I'll give you a call.
All right,
anyway.
mate. Roger that. Well done, buddy. Thank you.
Cheers.
Right. Cheers, buddy. See you, bye.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Fucking winds me up as well.
I know. Well, it's one of them subjects you just can't help getting passionate about.
Some of those guys you see on fucking Question Time.